Have you ever sensed, deep within, that your life is caught in an unseen loop, a quiet cycle that reveals itself through pain, uncertainty, or fear? It's as if you're not fully steering your own story, but rather an ancient shadow, a resonant echo from ages past, holds sway. What if I told you this shadow has a name, and it's woven into a journey that Jesus himself embarked upon, long before he became the eternal emblem of light? Jesus, the young boy who fled to Egypt, was more than a refugee seeking shelter. He was an apprentice of exile, a sojourner who ventured through the soul's desert to uncover, in the enigmatic and sun-scorched lands of Egypt, truths no synagogue or temple could impart. Egypt, with its legacy of captivity and emancipation, its towering pyramids piercing the heavens, and its secrets entombed in the sands of time, stands as more than a place. It's an archetype, a symbol of the inner terrain where the soul grapples with its deepest shadows. Picture Egypt not as a far-off land, but as a landscape within you. A realm where old wounds, unspoken fears, and persistent patterns lie hidden. It's here that Jesus was summoned to learn the art of facing the unknown, embracing the dark, and emerging reborn. His journey in Egypt mirrors our own, a call to traverse the inner wilderness and find the light that dawns from darkness. To understand Jesus' time in Egypt, we must first consider the land itself. In the 1st century, Egypt was a province of the Roman Empire, yet it retained an aura of ancient grandeur. Home to the Library of Alexandria and a crossroads of Greek, Roman, and indigenous cultures, it was a melting pot of ideas. But beyond its bustling cities, Egypt's deserts and temples whispered of a deeper wisdom, rooted in millennia of spiritual inquiry. The Egyptians revered cycles of life, death, and rebirth, as seen in their myths of Osiris, the god dismembered and restored, and the annual flooding of the Nile, which brought renewal to the land. For the Holy Family, fleeing Herod's wrath, Egypt was a sanctuary. The Gospel of Matthew 2:13-15 briefly recounts their escape, fulfilling the prophecy, "Out of Egypt I called my son." But the silence of the canonical texts on Jesus' years in Egypt invites speculation and tradition. Coptic Christian accounts preserved in Egypt's ancient churches suggest the family lived in places like Matariya and Old Cairo, where springs and trees are still venerated as sites of their presence. Apocryphal texts, such as the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, describe a young Jesus performing miracles, bending palm trees, taming wild beasts, and healing the afflicted. While these tales may be more symbolic than historical, they paint Egypt as a crucible of transformation, where the divine child began to grasp his purpose. Symbolically, Egypt is the land of duality. It is both the house of bondage, where the Israelites toiled, and the cradle of liberation, where Moses led them to freedom. It is the domain of pharaohs, whose monuments defy time, and of mystics, whose rituals sought eternity. For Jesus, Egypt was not just a refuge, but a school of the soul, where the tensions of human existence, light and shadow, freedom and constraint were laid bare. From a psychological lens, Egypt represents the unconscious, the vast and uncharted territory where our deepest truths reside. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, described the unconscious as a realm of archetypes, universal patterns that shape our psyche. Among these is the shadow, the repository of traits, desires, and fears we suppress. To become whole, Jung argued, we must confront and integrate the shadow, a process he called individuation. Jesus' sojourn in Egypt can be seen as a mythic enactment of this journey, where he faced the unknown and emerged with a deeper understanding of his divine and human nature. Consider your own life. Have you ever felt an inexplicable pull towards something you can't name? A restlessness that lingers despite success, or a sorrow that surfaces without cause? These are the whispers of your inner Egypt, the place where unresolved aspects of your psyche dwell. Like Jesus, you are called to enter this space, not to conquer it, but to learn from it. The desert, with its stark beauty and relentless silence, strips away illusions, forcing us to face what we've avoided. In the stillness of Egypt's nights, where the stars burn with ancient clarity, Jesus might have learned that exile is not a curse, but a crucible. The desert teaches patience, resilience, and surrender. It demands that we let go of control and trust in a larger unfolding. For Jesus, this meant embracing his dual identity, human and divine, vulnerable yet eternal. For us, it means acknowledging our contradictions, our strength alongside our fragility, our aspirations beside our doubts. What specific lessons might Jesus have gleaned in Egypt? While the scriptures are silent, we can infer from the land's spiritual heritage and the arc of his later ministry. Egypt's wisdom traditions, from the priests of Memphis to the hermits of the desert, emphasized the interplay of opposites, life and death, order and chaos, the mortal and the divine. These were not enemies but partners in a cosmic dance. Jesus, as a child absorbing this milieu, may have begun to see suffering not as punishment but as a pathway to growth. One lesson could be the power of presence. In the desert where distractions are few, the present moment becomes vivid. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, a collection of spells for the afterlife, speaks of coming forth by day, a metaphor for awakening to the now. Jesus' later teachings about the lilies of the field, unburdened by tomorrow, Matthew 6:28-34, echo this focus on the present as the locus of divine encounter. Another lesson might be the sanctity of the ordinary. Egypt, despite its grandeur, was a land of farmers, artisans, and laborers. The Holy Family living among such people would have shared their daily struggles. Jesus, observing the rhythms of sowing and reaping, may have learned that the sacred is not confined to temples, but permeates the mundane. His parables, rich with images of seeds, bread, and vineyards, reflect this insight, grounding spiritual truths in the textures of everyday life. Perhaps most crucially, Jesus learned about integration. Egypt's myths, like that of Osiris, center on fragmentation and restoration. Osiris, torn apart by his brother Set, is reassembled by Isis, his wife, and reborn as Lord of the underworld. This narrative prefigures Jesus' own death and resurrection, but on a deeper level, it speaks to the human task of reconciling our divided selves. In Egypt, Jesus may have begun to understand that true wholeness comes not from rejecting the shadow, but from embracing it as part of the divine tapestry. Now, turn the lens inward. What is your Egypt? What inner landscape have you avoided, fearing its barrenness or its truths? Perhaps it's a memory you've buried, a dream you've abandoned, or a part of yourself you've judged unworthy. These are the sands of your desert, and they hold the seeds of your transformation. The invitation of Jesus' journey is to enter this space with courage, not to fix or erase what you find, but to listen. The desert is a place of revelation, where the noise of the world fades and the soul's voice grows clear. It asks you to pause, to breathe, to feel the weight of your own existence. What fears have you carried too long? What wounds have you hidden, hoping they'd vanish? These are not your enemies, but your teachers, guiding you toward wholeness. Jungian psychology offers a framework for this work. The shadow, Jung wrote, is the thing a person has no wish to be. Yet it is also the source of creativity and vitality. To meet the shadow is to reclaim these gifts. Jesus, in Egypt, may have faced his own humanity, his vulnerability, his dependence on others, and found in it the roots of his compassion. You too can find strength in what you've deemed weak, wisdom in what you've called foolish. Beyond psychology, Egypt has long been a land of mystical initiation. Ancient mystery schools, such as those at Heliopolis and Thebes, taught that the soul's journey mirrors the cosmos. Initiates underwent trials, symbolic deaths and rebirths, to awaken their divine essence. While there's no evidence Jesus studied in these schools, the cultural air he breathed was thick with such ideas. The Essenes, a Jewish sect with ties to Egypt, practiced asceticism and meditation, seeking union with the divine. Early Christian hermits like St. Anthony later retreated to Egypt's deserts, continuing this tradition of inner questing. In this light, Jesus' time in Egypt can be seen as an initiation, preparing him for his public ministry. The desert, with its harsh clarity, is a natural crucible for such work. It strips away pretense, revealing the soul's core. Jesus, living among Egypt's contrasts, its fertile Nile and barren wastes, may have learned to hold paradox, that divinity shines brightest in human frailty, that love is most potent in the face of suffering. This initiatory perspective invites us to see our own struggles as sacred rites. The losses you've endured, the doubts you've wrestled, are they not trials in your own mystery school? Each challenge is a threshold, asking you to shed an old self and step into a new one. Like Jesus, you are both the initiate and the initiated, learning through experience what cannot be taught. Egypt's significance extends beyond Jesus' story to the collective human experience. Across cultures, the desert is a universal symbol of testing and renewal. The Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, facing temptation in a metaphorical desert. The Prophet Muhammad received revelations in the caves of Hira, surrounded by Arabia's sands. Indigenous traditions, from the Navajo to the Aboriginal Australians, use vision quests in desolate places to connect with the sacred. Egypt, as a mythic desert, belongs to all of us, a place where the soul is refined. This shared archetype suggests that Jesus' journey is not exclusive, but inclusive. His time in Egypt speaks to anyone who has felt exiled, whether by circumstance or inner turmoil. Have you ever felt estranged from your own life, as if you've wandered too far from home? This is your Egypt, and it's here that you're called to rediscover your belonging, not to a place, but to yourself. The universality of Egypt also points to a deeper truth. We are all connected through our shadows. The fears you carry, the wounds you bear, they are not yours alone, but part of humanity's tapestry. Jesus, by entering Egypt, entered this collective story, taking on the weight of human struggle. His later teachings on forgiveness, compassion, and the kingdom within reflect an understanding that liberation comes not from transcending the human condition, but from embracing it fully. How, then, do you embark on this journey? The first step is awareness. Notice the patterns in your life, the emotions that recur, the situations that echo. These are signposts to your Egypt. Journaling can help. Write about a persistent fear or a lingering grief. What does it feel like in your body? What images or memories arise? This act of naming begins to illuminate the shadow. Next, practice presence. The desert teaches us to be here now. Try a simple meditation. Sit quietly, focus on your breath, and let thoughts pass without judgment. When discomfort arises, don't push it away. Ask, what are you here to teach me? This dialogue with your inner world is the heart of the journey. Community can also support you. Share your reflections with a trusted friend or join a group exploring spiritual or psychological growth. Jesus didn't travel alone. He had Mary and Joseph. You, too, need companions to mirror your truths and hold space for your discoveries. Finally, embrace ritual. Egypt's ancients used ceremonies to mark transitions. Create your own. Light a candle to honor a loss, walk in nature to release a burden, or write a letter to a part of yourself you've neglected. These acts anchor the inner work, making it tangible. As we near the end of this exploration, a profound shift emerges. What if the light you seek is not outside you, not in a doctrine, a savior, or a distant paradise? What if you are the symbol you've been searching for? Jesus learned in Egypt that revelation comes from within. The exile, the silence, the shadow, these are not obstacles but gateways to the sacred. The desert taught him that the divine is not a remote force, but an ever-present essence, woven into the fabric of his being. His time in Egypt was not about escaping darkness, but about finding light within it. And you? Are you ready to see your Egypt, its shadows, its mysteries, as the birthplace of your renewal? The exile you face today, whether a personal crisis or a quiet discontent, is the soil where your soul can take root. The pain you carry is not a flaw, but a portal, inviting you to become whole. This truth unlocks spiritual freedom. There is no light without shadow, no rebirth without surrender, no journey without courage. You are the apprentice, the pilgrim, and the master of your path. Your Egypt, with all its challenges, is not a place to flee, but a realm to explore, where every step reveals more of who you are. As you sit with these words, let the desert's silence envelop you. Feel the warmth of the sands, the whisper of the wind, the vastness of the stars. Your Egypt is calling, not as a punishment, but as a promise. It asks you to trust the unknown, to honor your shadows, to walk with love through the places you feared. What is the first step you'll take? Perhaps it's a question, what part of me needs to be seen? Or a practice, sitting in stillness for 5 minutes each day? Or a commitment to listen to your soul's whispers, no matter how faint? Jesus' journey in Egypt was not the end, but the beginning. It prepared him to live, teach, and love in a world of light and shadow. Your journey too is just beginning. The desert awaits, and with it, the light that has always been yours.